Tonight, a grim start to the year as police investigate a suspicious death near Alice Springs. Rivers at risk. Concerns raised over the impact of cotton, but the government stands firm on its policy. Dozens of people dead and buildings destroyed as a huge earthquake rocks Japan. And the case of the missing baggy greens, the hunt for David Warner's stolen caps ahead of his final test. Good evening, Eleni Roussos with ABC News. It's been a grim start to the new year in Alice Springs after the body of a 19-year-old man was found near a cattle station outside of the town. Police say the death is being treated as suspicious and are calling for dashcam footage to help in the investigation.
On the unsealed road from a town in the middle of the desert, a shocking discovery.
A death that can only be described as an absolute tragedy occurring on the first day in 2024. A young man who's passed away, whose family will no longer have him for this year and for every year going forward.
The man's body was found beyond the end of the sealed section of Undulia Road on an access road to Undulia Station just after 12:30 yesterday afternoon, when a woman driving noticed him and contacted emergency services. Police calling on anyone who may have dashcam footage from New Year's Day in and around Alice Springs to help solve this suspicious case.
Any information will be extremely important to the investigation. Every piece will be put together and will obviously be able to assist us in identifying what happened in relation to this young person who's passed away.
From here in Darwin, a forensic pathologist will travel down to the crime scene east of Alice Springs to establish how the 19-year-old died and whether his body was moved at any point. Police say they believe the man had only been at the site where he was discovered for a short time.
We believe he had only been there on that particular location where he was located for a short period of time, but obviously our investigation will be thorough and will examine all lines of inquiry that lead us to his movements in the last number of hours and days leading up to his death.
The answers to his death and the final moments of his life now under the microscope. Miles Holbrook-Walk, ABC News.
An independent assessment commissioned by the Northern Territory Government to find out if an environmental report claiming a major new cotton industry could damage rivers and aquifers was true has found most of the conclusions were correct. But the NT Government is adamant it must balance the needs of the environment with developing the Territory's economy.
The NT Government wants to use the lure of catching a barramundi on the Daly River to attract more people to the Territory.
I think that's every Territorian wants to make sure that our rivers flow, that our aquifers are untouched.
But it's also determined to give out a lot more water from the Daly River floodplains and aquifers to support a major new cotton industry. Green Group, the Pew Charitable Trusts, published a report predicting that could damage wetlands.
We could see impact on recreational fishing and the barramundi stocks that rely on those floodplains, and also species like sawfish.
Using Freedom of Information laws, Pew discovered the NT Government gave Charles Darwin University a $35,000 contract to check whether the report's claims were backed up by reputable science. The university determined the majority of the report was supported by science. It had just minor criticism that some interpretations of the science tended towards the greater consequences.
It highlights that the community concerns are real about what large-scale cotton could mean for our rivers.
Asked if it set out to discredit the Pew report's conclusions, the NT Government said it wanted an objective assessment to either rebut or confirm the science. It isn't planning to change water policy as a result.
But I can assure Territorians that the Department of Environment and Parks and Water Safety are very much focused on making sure our water supply and across the Territory is intact.
You do need regulation around the environment, but at the end of the day, you also need to take steps which ensure that we have a growing economy.
The Pew Trusts is still hoping politicians will take the report's warnings about water overuse seriously. Jane Barden, ABC News.
At least 48 people have been killed after a powerful earthquake struck central North Japan. Thousands of rescuers, including the Japanese military, have been deployed, searching for survivors under the rubble. And authorities are warning the danger isn't over yet.
Fear and panic. A strong earthquake hits central Japan just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This newsroom, journalists hide under their desks while a cameraman carries on filming. People are trapped under the rubble. Buildings have collapsed. Some areas have been completely wiped out. In Ishikawa, the epicentre of the quake, officials were overwhelmed by the number of people calling for help. The force of the magnitude 7.6 quake was felt in this underground car park. Foreigners and tourists caught up in the chaos. People crouched and took cover in train stations. At shrines, shocked worshippers had a narrow escape. Japan is used to earthquakes on this scale, but there hasn't been one this strong since the devastating 2011 quake and tsunami, which killed more than 18,000 people. There are fewer casualties from this earthquake, but there's still great concern. Thousands have been left without power, with fires tearing through buildings. Many were shopping when the earthquake struck. Authorities have warned that more aftershocks could follow. Tremors were felt hundreds of kilometres away here in the capital. Across the country, thousands spent the night in shelters, worried about what may be coming next. Nuclear power plants have all reported that the situation is normal, but for a country that's been ravaged by earthquakes many times before, people here are not taking any chances. Residents were ordered to leave for higher ground as tsunami alerts were issued. They were later downgraded, but people have been warned not to return to their homes, with more potentially dangerous waves expected.
People trapped in buildings should be rescued as soon as possible before the buildings collapse. I have ordered self-defence forces to get to the disaster-hit areas immediately.
Japan's meteorological agency has warned of the risk of landslides. Roads have already been cut off and emergency services are battling to reach disaster zones. The Japanese military has been deployed, the government promising to get help to where it's needed as soon as it can. Jake Sturmer, ABC News, Tokyo.
An Australian serving with the Israeli army has been killed while fighting inside Gaza. The 32-year-old reservist was called up for duty after the October 7 attack and is the first known Australian to die inside Gaza since the war started.
Lior Sivan didn't choose a career in Israel's military but was called up for duty on October 7. After weeks inside Gaza, the combat officer was killed when the tank he was captaining came under Hamas attack.
My son, without hesitation, came out to shoot at the terrorist, but it was an ambush. He saved 7 of his soldiers by this heroic act.
Yo, dude!
Yeah, dude! The mechanical engineer was a father of 1 with another child due next week. At his funeral, friends and his wife spoke of Lior's sense of humour and warm personality.
I can't imagine our lives without you. But I promise to do everything to be a family that still loves life and laughs.
Lior, you were a person who drew people to you like a magnet, whether it was because of your impressive height and you being so handsome, or whether it was because of your captivating personality, charisma, and the self-confidence that you radiated.
Lior Sivan was born in Melbourne and moved to Israel as a young child. His father says his son wasn't a fighter, but wanted to protect Israel's survival.
And even though my son loved life, creation, nature, and peace, he saw as a very important task to defend the country and the people.
Lior is buried next to 2 other Israeli soldiers who've also died since October 7. On his grave, a memorial stone reads, "We will remember and we will win." Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs has offered its condolences to Captain Sivan's family. Alison Horn, ABC News, Bet Shemesh in Israel.
The family of cycling world champion Melissa Hoskins say the outpouring of sadness and support has been overwhelming. 32-year-old Ms Hoskins was killed when she was struck by a ute last Saturday night on a street near her Adelaide home. Ms Hoskins' family members say they're utterly devastated and still struggling to process what has happened. They say they've not only lost a daughter and sister, her children have lost their mum, a freewheeling spirit, a giver with a big heart, patience and a zest for life. Ms Hoskins' husband, 33-year-old former professional cyclist Rowan Dennis, has been charged with causing her death by dangerous driving without due care and endangering life. He's been granted police bail and will appear in court in March. The southeast Queensland coast is in the grips of another weather emergency. More relentless rain has smashed communities from Maryborough to the New South Wales border, flooding roads and homes. ADF troops have been called in to help with the mammoth clean-up, with Brisbane now in the firing line for flash flooding.
A raging torrent tearing through Mount Tamborine. Shops submerged from the days-long drenching, relentless water gushing into homes. Another 250 millimetres fell in the area overnight.
The power of Mother Nature is incredible.
So powerful it caught some off guard.
Holy crap! That weather turned end of world weather in half a minute.
With the heavy rainfalls and the already compromised ground, we're getting landslips and we're getting new tree falls on our road network.
Closer to the coast, destruction seen from above. 242 mils fell at Wongawallan. The scale of the damage there is hard to fathom.
That was my kitchen. That was my deck, which is now in my lounge room.
Destruction in some parts of the Gold Coast and Scenic Rim and Logan. I've certainly never seen anything like it before.
Rivers and creeks are still rising, and so is the danger.
Swiftwater crews have had over 20 rescues in the last 24 hours, with over 50 people requiring rescue.
Dangerous surf, closed beaches, theme parks shut too for the 3rd time in a week. The threat's now shifted north to the Sunshine Coast, where some braved the conditions.
Rain, hail or shine, play cricket.
Whopper Dam at Yandina is overflowing. Roads and bridges are underwater, a close call for this driver. Police towed her car out of floodwaters at Buderim. Exhausted SES crews are still staying positive.
This is what we train for and this is what we do.
SEQ Water is monitoring dams across the region. Releases are being considered. About 50 Defence Force personnel and high clearance vehicles will be sent to help with recovery efforts on the Gold Coast, the Scenic Rim and here in Logan. They'll be on the ground from Thursday. Much of the southeast facing one mighty clean-up just 2 days into 2024. Simon Cullen, ABC News, Gold Coast.
While tourism generally dries up during the wet season, the fishing industry brings an unexpected boon to local businesses. The $1 Million Fish competition attracts amateur and professional anglers from near and far, all vying for the big prize, the $1 Million Barramundi.
For most anglers, a well-caught fish is enough of a reward.
Okay, well, guess it's back on then.
But a handful of lucky top-end fishers are reeling in above the market price.
He's got a tag! He's got a tag! Oh my god, we have to see what season it is.
A red tag making this barra worth $10,000.
Season 9!
Yes!
The joy of catching one is just, you can't compare. We say it like every single season, this is the best comp ever.
Lauren is one of the winners in this season of the $1 Million Fish competition, a tourism initiative from the NT government. At the start of each wet season, 100 tagged barramundi are released into top-end waters, each worth $10,000, with $1 million fish released alongside them. In the 8 years the competition has been running, the $1 million fish has never been caught, but anglers have been guaranteed that will change this year.
We can narrow the scope to make sure that somebody will absolutely be a $1 million winner this year.
The competition is exhilarating for both anglers and businesses alike, last season bringing in $23 million from interstate alone.
It's done wonders for my brother's business, it's done wonders for the rest of the fishing industry, the amount of money that gets spent in all the stores.
Stirred everybody right up, got everyone completely frothing on catching barra, and just added this little element in there that really got people sort of motivated.
And while some fishers will be happy with just one tag, Lauren won't let up until the season is done.
Plan is to get another tag, preferably to get the $1 million.
So while you might have some fierce competition, now is the perfect time to throw a line in the water. You might just win big. Daniel Litchens, ABC News, Darwin.
It's been revealed the pilot killed in the SeaWorld helicopter crash a year ago had traces of cocaine in his system on the day of the accident. A scientist believes the traces were so low it's unlikely to have impacted his motor skills. But investigators say it's not known whether the drug's side effects, which can include fatigue, depression and inattention, affected the pilot's performance.
For those who witnessed the shocking mid-air collision, memories are still vivid.
Shock like I've never had before. It just didn't look real. It was like something out of a movie scene.
4 people were killed when the 2 SeaWorld helicopters crashed over the Gold Coast Broadwater estuary. Pilot Ashley Jenkinson, Sydney mother Vanessa Tadros and British couple Ron and Diane Hughes died. 3 others were critically injured. Now, a year on, an interim report into the crash has revealed Ashley Jenkinson had traces of cocaine in his system. A forensic pharmacologist has told air crash investigators the traces of cocaine were so low, it's unlikely the drug was taken within 24 hours of the accident and wouldn't have impaired his psychomotor skills. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau is looking into the personal and operational stress the pilot was under in the months leading up to the incident.
Humans we know are susceptible to miscalculations, to not following procedures, and they're the sorts of things that we are very keen to understand.
As part of the investigation, a 3D animation of the moments leading up to the fatal crash is being created in Germany.
So that we can see exactly what was likely to be seen or possible to be seen by both the pilots.
Sean Pringle remembers how excited the passengers were before the Joy flights and the aftermath inside the terminal.
A lot of screaming and people demanding answers, and obviously we didn't have any answers. So it was pretty horrible.
He believes more people would have died had it not been for the actions of the surviving pilot, Michael James.
The position he ended up in after the collision and then to actually get it down safely, unbelievable, incredible, superhuman.
Emergency agencies practiced a search and rescue drill near the crash scene last month as part of a review into their response.
There'd be a lot further education in relation to sort of the aviation side of things.
The ATSB will release its final report with recommendations in 6 months.
Got to get that right if we're going to have recommendations that are widely picked up, not only here on the Gold Coast, but more broadly throughout Australia.
Kirsten Webster, ABC News, Gold Coast.
Home ownership is now even more out of reach for many Australians, with double-digit price surges in several states for 2023. Experts are predicting interest rate relief this year, but also more price pain for first home buyers.
The property market boomed last year, even though interest rates were at a 13-year high.
I've been in real estate nearly 40 years and I haven't seen anything like this before. It's quite unusual.
The real estate agent wants $1.4 million for this 2-bedroom flat, and it might just get that thanks to growing interest from cashed-up investors.
There's a shortage of properties on the market, and therefore, because of the higher demand, the prices have been rising.
The numbers for 2023 are now in, and the rises for the year ended at more than 8% across Australia. That has pushed up the price of the average home to around $750,000. Perth, Brisbane and Sydney jumped the most, while Adelaide, Melbourne and Canberra rose as well. Hobart and Darwin were the only capitals where prices dropped.
I would imagine 2024 is going to start with a slowdown at the high end of the market in particular.
But this trend might be short-lived.
Once we get a stronger signal that a cash rate cut is on the horizon or the cash rate actually goes down, that would start to stimulate more demand.
Our base case is no more rate rises in Australia, and we expect the first rate cut to start in September.
The average home now costs more than 8 times the standard annual income.
So it's a pretty difficult time for people trying to get into the housing market currently.
Saving up for a deposit is also difficult when rents keep going up. Nationally, they soared by more than 8% in 2023, which was adding to even bigger increases in the previous 2 years.
Apartment rents have been going up the most.
Unless there's a substantial change in household composition or a dramatic drop-off in overseas migration, you would expect that rental demand to stay very high.
Making this year likely another tough one for low-income households and a good one for cashed-up investors. Amelia Terzon, ABC News.
To finance now, and the stock market's first day of trading for the year has set sights high. Here's Daniel Ziffer.
After the market rested in the Christmas week, it hit the track today like someone who'd bought jogging shoes the morning after a blowout New Year's Eve. The ASX 200 index of our 200 largest companies listed on the stock exchange traded just a breath from a record high set in August 2021. That was near midday in what's called intraday trading. It closed slightly less than that, up 0.5 percentage point for a stratospheric start to the year. The broader All Ordinaries, covering 500 companies, had a similar trajectory today. Most global markets were shut for the New Year's Day holiday, so let's look at what they did last year. And for reference, our key index lifted just under 10% in 2023. The Aussie dollar seems to have also made a resolution to head to the gym, growing in strength against major currencies in trading today as the value of gold continues to shine. It's well above US $2,000 an ounce. And according to new data, the value of our homes, averaged nationally, surged by 8% last year. But how did we do it? By making households take on an absolutely punishing amount of debt. About 1 in 3 households has a mortgage, another third have paid it off, and a further third rent where they live. If we held a debt Olympics of similar nations, we'd have been on the podium in 2022, and given the vast majority of our loans are subject to the fluctuations of interest rates instead of being fixed for decades and forgotten about, the next lot of OEC data should see us take out the gold. And that's finance.
They're the ultimate Australian sporting symbol, and retiring opening batsman David Warner has just had all of his stolen. On the eve of his final test in Sydney, Warner has issued a plea for the return of his baggy green caps, believed to have been taken in transit to the SCG.
Hi everyone, Dave Warner here. Unfortunately, this is my last resort to do this.
On the eve of his 112th and final test, David Warner's most prized possessions have been stolen.
Inside this backpack was my baggy greens. That's sentimental to me. It's something that I would love to have back in my hands, walking out there come this week.
Warner says his bag was stolen while it was being freighted from Melbourne to Sydney, and now he's pleading with the thief to return it.
If it's the backpack that you really wanted, I have a spare one here. You won't get into trouble.
The look on the Pakistan captain's face says it all.
I think there should be a countrywide search right now from the Australian government. He's been a great ambassador, and he deserves every bit of respect, every bit of celebration for his unbelievable career.
It's a bitter blow for Warner as he prepares to bow out of Test cricket at his home ground tomorrow.
Every time he walks out there, he's competitive, ready to go. So just a champion of Australian sport, and hopefully he gets a good send-off this week.
Australia will be looking to claim a clean sweep of the 3-test series. And Pat Cummins says if the situation allows, he might give the opener a bowl.
A leg spinner maybe to take the last wicket of the game or something. Out of the rough.
Well, I only just thought of it.
But there's no danger of complacency, even though the match is effectively a dead rubber.
I don't think so now that the World Test Championship's there. You know, every test match is important. It's a home test match. Every test match you play is big, but everyone in Australia is just even bigger.
Australia's going into the test unchanged, but Pakistan are still deciding. Sydney's fickle weather has played havoc with this test over the past few years. The good news, though, is that this week the forecast is mainly positive, with only the chance of a few brief showers later in the week. David Mark, ABC News, Sydney.
World number one Novak Djokovic has overcome a persistent wrist complaint to book Serbia's spot in the quarterfinals of the United Cup tennis tournament in Perth. His win could set up a blockbuster quarterfinal against Australia after it advanced last night at the expense of defending champions the United States.
The majority of fans in the packed Perth arena were hoping for a Novak Djokovic masterclass. And it was clear from the outset the Serb intended to deliver.
Be careful if you leave a space down there, even this early in the match.
The world number one's biggest concern seemingly not his Czech Republic opponent, but rather the mix of natural and artificial light in the stadium. As he wasted little time taking the first set against Jiri Lehečka. But a wrist issue would prove to be a bigger concern, and Lehečka took advantage to level the match a set apiece.
Going toe-to-toe with the world number one.
36-year-old Djokovic sought treatment ahead of the decider, and it proved the difference as he booked Serbia's spot in the quarterfinals. Also advancing, Australia, following its come-from-behind win over the US last night. The host nation was down in the tie when Jessica Pegula defeated Ajla Tomljanovic. But Alex de Minaur would even the contest with a straight sets win over Taylor Fritz. Matthew Ebden and Storm Hunter then completed the comeback, knocking out last year's tournament victor.
And Team Australia getting the W big time.
Rain continued to cause delays on day 5 of the Brisbane International, although Australia's former Queen of the Court was staying dry under the Pat Rafter Arena roof.
There's Ash Barty with baby Hayden.
The former world number one watching on as 5th seed Sebastian Korda was knocked out by German Yannick Hanfmann in straight sets. While last night the 2nd seed Grigor Dimitrov advanced over former world number one Andy Murray. Garrett Mundy, ABC News.
Let's take a look at the weather now, and Veronica Jane Thorpe sent in tonight's viewer pick. Very hot conditions extending across much of the territory again, with isolated storms over the top end and in the far southwest. It rained in Darwin's rural area and in Palmerston today. Apart from some rain overnight in Darwin, it was hot and sunny today, reaching 36 degrees at the airport. Across the territory, extreme temperatures were recorded across the north and south, with the mercury soaring past 40 degrees in many locations. Alice Springs had the day's hottest temp of 43 degrees recorded late this afternoon. On the satellite, cloud is building over the top end. A coastal trough is bringing rain to southern Queensland, and there's a bit of rain activity over Victoria and New South Wales. Moisture is building over the Northern Territory, increasing the chance of rain and storms for the top end. Rain will also spread to Central Australia later in the week as a series of troughs move through. Interstate tomorrow, chance of rain for Brisbane, a fine day for Sydney, a high chance of rain for Melbourne and cloud clearing in Perth. Back home, staying very hot in the south tomorrow, chance of rain and storms in the southwest Leicester district and in the centre as well. Up north, daytime temps will begin to ease slightly as cloud and rainfall increases over the top end. Hot and muggy winds across the northwest. There's a high chance of showers for Darwin, most likely from the late morning. Heatwave conditions continuing across the territory tomorrow, with very hot conditions likely on the Tiwi Islands, northeast Arnhem Land and in the Simpson district. Out on the water, there'll be a high tide of 5.7 metres at 9:15 in the morning and a low tide at 3:30 in the afternoon. The sun will rise at 6:24 and will go down at 17 minutes past 7. And looking ahead for Darwin, warm nights and hot days continuing with an increasing chance of rain and storms. In Alice Springs, another very hot day tomorrow with the chance of rain and storms over the weekend. And that's ABC News for this Tuesday night. Thank you for your company. Good night.